Okay, welcome back from the break. And again, we're talking about obesity, and I've kind of talked about this show being the skinny on weight. But anyway, with that, there is a call-in line, and it is not the number you see below. Now it is, and it is 727-8750. So if you have any questions about the topic we're discussing tonight or any other related topics with regard to medicine, feel free to call in. We'll try and take those calls. Getting back to what we were talking about, I want to briefly review that we talked about obesity as being a semi-epidemic, and that it affects 1 out of every 3 Americans, and that the rate of morbid obesity and extreme obesity are growing extremely fast. And I don't think you have to really walk outside and walk to a restaurant or to a shopping center and see that more people are becoming obese all the time. And we talked about what equals 1 pound, and it's 3,500 calories. And we talked about if you were to eat 1 extra 10-calorie piece of gum a day, every day, and kept everything the same, and you weighed 200 pounds, that over the course of 20 years, you would gain 20 pounds. And that's why we just see these slow incremental gains in weight. So let's work the equation on the opposite. So what happens if we decide to reduce our caloric intake? So if we decide that we take the same formula, 1 calorie equals, 1 pound equals 3,500 calories, and we decide to go on a diet, either with exercise or moderation and a little bit of our diet, we reduce our caloric intake from 2,000 calories a day to 1,800 calories a day, what will our weight be at the end of 1 year? Well, we will have actually lost 200 calories a day. We will lose 20 pounds in a year. And in reality, that's pretty simple. I mean, 2 pieces of bread equals 200 calories. So if you were just to have a sandwich without any bread, I mean, you would basically, if you had 1 sandwich a day, you would lose 200 calories. And what will they weigh a year, 10 years after that if they ate 1,800 calories a day? Well, it's kind of a trick because they basically are eating what their weight is. So 1,800 calories maintains a weight of 180 pounds based on that 10 calories per pound of metabolic burn rate. And so they basically have a balanced metabolism at that point. So when you start to go on a diet, you'll actually see this large amount of weight gain initially. Why is that? Well, because you're eating a large amount of food. And then all of a sudden you say, I'm going to diet. I'm just going to go on a diet. And then you see this massive weight loss initially when you do that. Instead of eating 3,500 calories a day, you go down to like 2,000 calories a day. Well, you lose a pound every 2.3 days just based on the formula that we discussed. 3,500 calories equals a pound. If you eliminated 1,500 calories a day, well, you do the math, and that's what it comes out to be. But as you get closer to that target, I mean, as your weight follows a curve like this, where it basically does like a curve, you'll see as you get closer to the caloric intake that maintains that weight based on your individual metabolism, the weight loss slows and you have to do something else. So that brings up the next slide where we basically say, okay, this person basically gets busy and they decide that they're going to basically use a little more weight. And so this is the formula I was saying. They have 1,800 calories a day divided by 10 calories per pound equals 180. And what happens when they reduce their intake to 1,600 calories a day? What will their weight be? Well, they drop in another 200 calories a day, so they'll drop another 20 pounds over that year. And so their weight will be 160 pounds. And if they maintain that weight, that caloric intake, they'll maintain 160 pounds. But I know I've done this before. I lost a lot of weight and then gave up bread and then all of a sudden go back to eating bread and then the weight comes back on. So we're all creatures of habit, unfortunately.
And how do you get away from the bread? Because you love the bread. I mean, the bread is the best part of the meal.
Well, there was a was a talk I listened to, and basically the gentleman was saying, you go to a restaurant and they serve you bread, and then they serve you a dessert, and your dessert is the meal, basically because you've ingested all these calories through the bread, and you really don't need anything after that. But it's true. I mean, we all love bread, but we're going to go a little bit into the dietary part of that in just a minute. But I have a few notes up here. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and so you can't really lose your weight that in a day.
But you can put it on in a day.
Well, there actually, I have this thing where, you know, if you gain more than 2 pounds in a day, it's all fluid. I mean, fluid weighs 8 pounds per gallon. So if you're stepping on the scale and you've gained a bunch of weight over a day, it's a fluid. So let's suppose you watch a low salt diet, and then you decide, and I see this a lot, people will say, I don't add any salt to my diet, and they're really strict at home. But then they slip up and they go to the buffet. And once you eat out, you have no control over the food you're eating. And with that, what happens? You ingest a bunch of salt, you retain a bunch of water, and the next thing you know, you've gained all this water weight. And so if you have congestive heart failure, you can pretty much bet that's going to cause you some problems. So let's talk a little bit about diet. I wanted to get into how we can do that. And one of the things I will list here is that with regards to food, fat goes directly to fat. So if you do have, you know, a high-fat diet, you will gain weight just because fat does get absorbed into your system and it does go to fat. Now, I was reading something interesting that was talking about diets and cholesterol, and basically it kind of poo-poos the idea of eating, you know, not eating meats and things of that nature, that somehow the cholesterol problems we have today are related to carbohydrates, and certainly a lot of the disease states we have are related to that. But carbohydrates in their basic form are the cause for obesity that we see today. And there are bad carbohydrates like high fructose corn syrup and processed foods are the main culprit for the weight gain we see today. Protein is actually of low caloric intake, meaning it has low caloric value. And if you were just to grab maybe a handful of almonds and eat them before you ate your meal, you actually delay the absorption of sugar. So eating protein tends to delay the absorption of the calories in your meal. So the higher your protein based in your diet, the better you are in being able to handle the sugar load. And there basically is going to be the basis for this low carbohydrate diet that we're going to talk about. Anyway, we're going to go to break here in just a minute, and when we come back, I'll be joined by Vern, who's in the peanut gallery, asking me a few questions. Thank you very much for tuning in, Pahrump. I'm enjoying doing this show, and I'm enjoying being with you this evening. Thank you very much.